Whoa. Well, welcome to Taboo Chronicles. This is Roberta, the Tool Lady. I don't have my other beautiful host here, Jackie or Raenesha, but of course they send their love. We do have someone who was just as fantastic. We have Tasha McGay. Is that correct, Tasha?
Jasmine McGahey.
Oh Lord, Jasmine McGay. And what we're going to talk about tonight, and I apologize because names are so important, Jazz. Uh, but we're talking about trauma. Jasmine is a trauma coach. So we're going to be diving into the topic of trauma, which is quite taboo in a lot of people of color environments or communities. We don't quite see drama or trauma in what it is in the light. Jasmine, would you like to come on in and introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Jasmine McGahey. I am a trauma-informed coach. So I specialize in helping individuals in underserved communities navigate trauma, as well as going into different organizations, schools, workplaces, and other nonprofits, and teaching them about trauma-informed care and trauma-informed communication.
All right. Okay. Now, could you tell us what trauma is? Because a lot of times, what I've found in the people of color, just people like you said, underserved individuals,
Mm-hmm.
or undereducated, whichever you want to say, I found that they don't even know that they've been traumatized or have been through a traumatic experience because it's a way of life. So,
Right.
could you explain what trauma means?
In a very simple way, it's basically, I would explain it as something that devastating that has happened to you that affects your mental, emotional, and physical ability to process life in a regular in a regular way. The things that we sometimes suppress, things that causes us like depression or even physical ailments, anything that has happened to you in your past that you're currently dealing with that has an extreme effect on just how you are able to navigate through life.
Okay. Okay. I like that. Thank you. Um,
Sure.
Now let's go back into identifying some of the things that could be traumatic. I know
Mhm.
that like an example would be something traumatic happening to you. But again, some things are so subtle or happen all the time that are not traumatic, and individuals do not realize that it is going to cause some type of traumatic experience or traumatic, I'd say, after effects.
Right.
We're talking
Hmm. Yeah.
trauma because the trauma is a side effect of it. So,
Hmm.
what if you can help me kind of bring up some? What would be some to you?
One of the biggest things that I think a lot of people overlook is being born. It's a very traumatic experience being born into the world. That's the first experience that everybody has individually, the first traumatic experience, because being born, whether it's like natural birth or C-section, is traumatic because you're taken from a safe space. And for me, it's the epitome of understanding what trauma is. You're being taken from a safe space and pushed out into an environment that you are unfamiliar with. And so that's a traumatic experience that we've all had. and we tend to overlook, and it creates, going forward, how we adjust to life. um, some other, I wouldn't want to say simpler traumatic events, because nothing about trauma is simple. But just anything from experiencing somebody else's trauma. If you were, maybe you saw somebody die in front of you, that could cause a lasting effect on your mental psyche. And so that's a traumatic experience that's secondhand. It didn't happen to you directly, but you witnessed it. So it can cause, for you to have some sort of trauma response, or, it can create a fear. Of course, like abusive relationships, poverty, anything that, again, is creating a narrative of just not feeling safe, or not feeling like you have control over your environment, or you're not able to navigate properly, can be considered traumatic.
Okay. All right. And I like the fact that you did include birth. Birth is one. When I used to provide sessions on this topic, that was my primary as well, because it is very traumatic. Individuals don't realize that that is a lot of work of the mother. It's a lot of work on the side of behalf of the baby, the infant. So it is a very painful, traumatic experience for both of them. And I like that you said that was something, a commonality. Um, but how about subtle, like maybe an environment, because I know certain things you can label as traumatic, like you said, death. That
Mm-hmm.
that's pretty traumatic. But what about an environment, like you said, poverty? What about
Mm-hmm.
divorce? Or a separation, a major separation from someone, a family member or other family members. Not having lights on, not having
Mm-hmm.
gas on, you know, not having a place to say that is safe, or one that is consistent. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm trying to like break it down more, because again, this is Taboo Chronicles, but that's one thing that we just don't talk about, right? People say, well, your older people say, well, I did the best I can,
Right.
and I don't know
Mm-hmm.
what your problem is now, right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So with saying that, it does go back to that. That's what
Mm-hmm.
I want us to be clear of, that it does go back to that. And like you said, you do, before we race it all the way up to now, as adults, trauma does go back to some subtle things that, a lot of times parents don't even think children have an ability to see what is going on, or,
Exactly.
or even process what is going
Mm-hmm. Yes, and
on.
and that's a common misconception, because they absolutely do. Children pay attention to everything, and every example that you gave, divorce, separation, just being in poverty, that at very young ages, that shapes, it pushes you into survival mode. And this is where we start to get the women who are, hyper independent, because maybe they grew up in a household where there wasn't a man to show them, how what a provider would look like. And so they establish this hyper independence. Or even little boys that may not have had their mother around to teach them what nurturing from a woman looked like, and that created these environments of men who are just going out having multiple kids, because they're trying to fill a void themselves and not understanding the process of what a healthy, family looks like. All of those things are trauma related. And like you said, the taboo thing is, in our communities, Black communities, even Hispanic communities, underserved communities, minority communities, we are so steadfast on surviving the day, that we feel like you're a child. It's that whole ideology of stay in a child's place. This is not something that you need to be concerned about. And we're not realizing that the kids are actually taking in everything that we do. They're seeing how we move, how we navigate, how we go about dealing with our stress. And they are actually taking that into their adult lives, and it becomes a pattern. And so it's hard. Once it becomes a pattern, it becomes a part of, who we are, and we pass it down to our kids. They pass it down to their kids. And then it's like, now you have generations just in survival mode. And so the trauma is infused in the healing process. Is hard to actually ascertain because we don't know where to start.
Right, right. Or you don't even know to start. Some
Right.
individuals, especially when you start talking about working on certain things or talking about certain things, they're not comfortable with it. You know,
Exactly.
People have put on a mask, and that mask is what they are, that what they're operating in, because it is to cover up how the emotions are and what the emotions
Mm-hmm.
are. It's a protection.
Absolutely.
It's a
Absolutely.
survival. Um, but I really do like the opportunity or the idea that we do start at childhood. I appreciate that. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
the other thing is, you're right. And people of color, we always say, children are supposed to be seen, not heard.
Mm-hmm.
You're not supposed to be talking about stuff outside these people, outside our house. You talk
Mm-hmm.
about business, and all along, it's keeping us uh, kind of imprisoned.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in those thoughts. Another thing I thought about when you were talking, I always say the little eye is always looking at the big eye,
Mm-hmm.
and we're not, a lot of times as adults, we don't think that because we're already have been programmed to think you don't have a voice, it's none of your,
Right.
this is my problem.
Right.
Although you're here.
Right.
You
Right. I
fight
mean, and that
that.
creates trauma in itself because then you that's where arrested development comes in. You have children that were taught, that they don't have a voice. So then when they get older, they're afraid to speak up. They don't know how to speak up. They don't know how to present themselves in certain ways. And so that creates trauma in itself.
Correct. 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 Now, Jasmine, I wanted you to kind of share a little bit about your backstory. I
Mhm.
kind of, when we first connected, I actually did go through some of your stuff.
Mhm.
That's what I do, and unfortunately, I try to analyze things, and I try not
Okay.
to overanalyze, but I try to analyze things. And so, what I see you say a lot of was talking about healing.
Mhm.
I've seen you talk a lot about healing.
Mhm.
So could you tell us a little bit about where your journey started and where you're at now?
Ooh, well, um my healing journey, I can't really pinpoint, but I can say like different experience and different moments. The biggest moment for me was because I am a person who I'm a fixer. I like to fix things. I'm a doer. Like I'm always doing something. I'm proactive. I have to have my hands in pretty much everything. If I'm not able to fix it or find a solution, something's wrong. And so I realized that that was kind of creating chaos in my life because I was attracting things and people that I needed to fix. And so I was, stressed out, worried, having, physical issues, because of it. We know stress causes a lot of physical issues. And so I was just kind of doing things on the surface to, relax myself and not be in a state of always having to do, always having to be, and always having to fix. And one day, I was in a really good place in my life, and I was getting sick out of nowhere, and I was having a panic attack. And I'm thinking like I have nothing going on, nothing's wrong. Why am I having a panic attack? And so I picked up a book just to kind of calm my nerves, and I read. It was one of my favorite books. It's a quantum physics book, but it talks a lot about energy. And a part that I read was saying that our mind and our body understands trauma differently. And when our body is in a state of rest and our mind hasn't caught up yet, then we go in, the body goes into panic mode because it's used to being in chaos. It's used to being stressed out. And when it's relaxed, it has that fight or flight response. And so I realized that's what was happening to me. And it was so crazy because I'm thinking to myself, I have everything is going right, and that is stressing me out.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the moment that I said, you know what? You need to take a deeper look at what you have going on in your world to where you can't even relax because that stresses you out. And that in that moment, that's when I decided to start my healing journey. I started doing some shadow work and just learning about, because a lot of times we do things and we're not sure why we are doing them, and we have to go back into those suppressed memories to get a better understanding. And so started doing some shadow work and started realizing, taking accountability for the situations that I put myself in to get a better understanding and become more self-aware so that I could start my healing journey. And where I'm at with that now, it's been about, I would say probably about 2.5 years since I've been on the journey actively. And now this is kind of where my practice came into play. I'm actually starting a nonprofit now where I can help other people on their journey. But where I'm at now is healing is an ongoing process. Nobody is ever completely healed. But I would say that I'm in a really good space to where if something were to trigger me, I'm very self-aware and I know what's going on to where I can center myself. I can get back to my safe space and I can recognize, okay, that's a trigger. So this is what I need to do so that I don't have a traumatic response to it. So I would say as far as my healing journey goes, I'm in a really good space and a good enough space to where I can actually help others understand their triggers and to be able to navigate their journey as well.
Okay. Okay. Now, if you don't mind, would you tell us one thing that was part of your trauma that was possibly some of that energy? I'm very much with energy, very,
Mm-hmm.
even, with the connections now that I make. And actually, the more awareness of that energy I am protected with, I'm
Mm-hmm.
more aware of when I connect with energy that's negative to me.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It really is something else, and we are energy. We are energy.
Yes.
Um, but what I want you to do is kind of, because you got to understand, some people, again, this is taboo to them.
Mm-hmm.
So some people that are listening or that will tap in, they're like, okay, I, I for one, I don't have any problems.
Mm-hmm.
So and then they, oh shoot, then two, I'm sorry, then two, they'll have, well, I've had panic attacks before,
Mm-hmm.
or but I don't know about this accountability stuff. So I want you just to say, like, to share with us something that you're, of course, comfortable with, because
Mm-hmm.
I never advise anyone to share something that you're not comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just kind of probably a disclosure I'll say right now as well. If you're still not healed and you're still going through some of the side effects, some things
Mm-hmm.
you went through as you're growing and you want to get better, uh,
Mm-hmm.
you want to be gentle with yourself and patient, and three, you want to have that safe place and that safe time, that
Right.
time to
Right.
work things out. So it doesn't quite work like, okay, I'm ready now, because that may be just as traumatic as
Traumatic. Absolutely.
that may be
Yeah. No.
also intense, because you're like, oh, all of this at one time. So
Right.
I want you to be aware of that if you're listening to us. But we do want you to get it,
Yeah.
because stress is a killer.
It,
Stress is
it, it
a killer.
is. It is. Um, I mean, I'm a pretty open book. I would not have taken this journey at this level if I wasn't ready to share my story and be completely transparent, because I feel like that's the only way that I'll be able to help other people along their journey. And I pretty much have trauma in all the buckets. And um, but one that I would probably touch on, because I think it might be the most relatable, is the accountability piece in relationships. Because I'm divorced, and that was a big part of me having to take accountability and also becoming more self-aware in order for me to be comfortable enough to get into another relationship, but also learning about myself. And so the accountability piece in that, what I had to do, like I had to do a lot of work, because when you're in relationship, pride plays a big part in a lot of why relationships don't work out. And we often, play the blame game when things are not working. We're arguing, somebody's doing something, maybe this person cheated, maybe this person is not, working the job that we want them to work. we want to point the finger and we want to play the blame game and we want to make it somebody else's fault because we have too much pride to say, this is what I did, or we're not self-aware enough to even acknowledge our role in it. And so that was a big thing for me. I had to take a step back and realize that even though I was hurt in the relationship and the divorce it came about because of cheating, you think to yourself, well, there's nothing that I did. It's always two people, right? And so for me, in order for me to be okay with the situation, I had to dig really deep and get a better understanding of what role I may have played in, the dissolution of my marriage. And what I realized was that I'm an amazing communicator in my personal life, in my professional life, but I am not so much in a relationship. Going back to, again, learning my childhood, learning that I was that kid who was not able to have a voice. And so I grew up to be the woman who was afraid of her voice. Anytime I was in a situation where, I was sharing a space with somebody, it was hard for me to speak up and talk about what my needs were or what I wanted without being defensive. I always got defensive. And so I had to, it was later on, of course, after the marriage, but I realized that I was not taking accountability for my lack of communication. I was not a good communicator. And that very well may have been other things that contributed to, the divorce. But for me, being responsible and holding myself accountable, I had to look back and say, okay, I wasn't the best communicator. So what do I need to do moving forward? And the first thing was not necessarily to be in a healthy relationship with another person, but to be in a healthy relationship with myself. That was the most important thing, because you can't give to anybody if you're not able to give to yourself. And so it took me a long time. I took a long break and actually dated myself, learned to love myself, learned how to communicate with myself, and just have conversation with myself about how I felt, what was, upsetting me, what did I like. And in doing so, I was able to transition that into relationships where, okay, now it's easier for me to say, I don't like this today, or you made me feel, because my thing was like, if I say, he made me feel like this, then maybe I'm complaining. Maybe he's going to feel like I'm complaining. And so I had to also, with the accountability piece, learn to give myself grace. That, what, your feelings do matter. And it's okay for you to talk about how you feel without thinking that you're being a burden. So it was a long stretch. And it was a lot of work that I'm still, it was tough. It was tough. But it's something that I still work on to this day. And I'm very active in learning how to take a step back. And instead of saying it was your fault, I take a minute, I pause, and I ask myself, what role did you play in this situation? And so for me, the accountability piece is huge.
Okay. Well, Jasmine, I'm gonna tell you the truth. Now, when you talk about a cheating man, uh, I'll be honest. I don't think we have nothing to do with that. I think that's his personal deal. But I can understand you say, I could take my accountability part because it was a relationship that was dissolved. So it, it did end, which that was something that definitely was probably on the table, that was up for an argument or debate of it's going to be a hit or miss. So I understand that, but I am going to say that part, and I possibly have you back on one of my shows to discuss that. To be honest, because that's a hot one right there. That's a whole nother three, four shows.
It definitely is.
But with communication, what I find with communication is that you hit the nail on the head. People don't know how to communicate. And even the most effective ones, maybe they know how to strategize, or maybe they know how to lead, but to communicate is a whole. It's a whole. It's a whole unit of its own, and it's needed all the way across relationships, especially in all relationships. So really people don't learn how to communicate, and I'll say even for that matter, people of color. But overall, meeting people and even providing sessions to them, I've learned that that's a big one. That's a
Yeah.
huge.
Yes.
Um, now, so tell me this. You said it, and I want you to identify what triggers are for
Mm-hmm.
our, because again, we're dealing with people who like, hey, I felt I've had some panic attacks, so my chest got heavy and I couldn't breathe.
Right.
But I fell out to the floor, breathed a little bit. Then I went and bought me a pair of shoes, and I felt better, right? Or I might jumped in another relationship, whichever
Right.
makes them feel better. They put that mask back on.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is some of the triggers?
Ooh, man, a trigger can be anything. To kind of simplify it, it's basically like you had said earlier that trauma is a symptom of what we deal with. The trigger is what causes it. It's like the adjective or the verb. Actually, it's like what causes the trauma. It what makes you remember, and it can be anything. It can be a smell, it can be a word, it can be a sound, it can be somebody, brushing your shoulder. It creates this memory, and it takes you back to that traumatic experience, and it throws you into that mode of like, you just kind of like, where the panic attacks come from is your body the sensory is starting to tense up and go into protective mode. It's like, okay, something is happening and now we need to protect ourselves. And because our mind doesn't really know what's going on, we're not connected. Our mind and our body isn't connected. But a trigger can be anything. And the only way to be aware, like you said, most of the time, if we're not aware of our triggers, something happens and we tend to overshadow it with something else. Like you said, maybe going, retail therapy, as people say, or, just doing something so we don't have to feel it. That's the biggest thing, is that you have to allow yourself to feel the emotion that you're having when the trigger happens, because the next time it happens, you're aware and you can actually take control of it. But if we keep going on and masking it, like you said, then that creates this bigger bubble, to where that's why people have heart attacks, or like out of nowhere just go off, because they didn't know that they were being triggered by something. But a trigger can be anything, but it's important to understand why we're even being triggered.
Okay. Okay. And one of our listeners was saying that the communication skills are different. So it's just understanding that there's different communication skills, which is true. We do have different communication skills, um, but we do have one that overall is more cohesive, and it
Mm-hmm.
with assertive communication skills, so,
Mm-hmm.
which means that you don't walk away feeling, like Jasmine said, well, I feel like I'm not heard, you
Right.
know, or or feeling like, hey, I got to go off to be heard, right? So communication, there are several different communication skills, but you do want to learn what are appropriate assertive communication skills, and that's basically going back to saying, hey, I feel like I'm not treated, or I feel this way, or
Right.
you know, I feel really sad when, I heard that this happened, and being
Mm-hmm.
able to communicate that, and not, and again, Jasmine has said pride. Pride usually stands in the way of a lot of things, especially people of color.
Mm-hmm.
We are
Yeah.
the most prideiest group of people on the earth.
Yeah.
And I mean, we for matter, we're superhuman. I get it, but
Yeah.
we have to start being gentle with ourselves.
Absolutely.
Being gentle with ourselves, because a lot of us are hurting, or doing some self hurt, whether it's with substances, addictions, or even addictions to people, and
Mm-hmm.
we're hurting ourselves more because we're not communicating effectively.
Mm.
Now, once you started on your journey, I know you said, well, now I'm in a good place. What are some of the signs that you had? And if you'll share them with us.
Mm-hmm. Um, and I actually I make posts about this a lot because people, that's one of the questions that people ask me, like, how do I know I even have trauma? That's one of the major signs, is to ask, do I have trauma? Because something in you is telling you that something is not right. Another major sign is physical ailments. We have been taught to medicate physical ailments. And when we have a headache, we have a stomach ache, we have, blurred vision, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, all of that is actually a trauma response that your body is having to not feeling safe. Your nervous system is shutting down because it doesn't feel safe. So if you're getting a headache, it doesn't mean you need to pop a Tylenol. You may need to remove yourself from the situation that you're in because it's triggering your nervous system. Your nervous system is remembering something that you're not remembering. And so it goes into panic mode and it creates the headache. The same thing with high blood pressure, hypertension. Your body is going into shock, and it's telling, your nervous system is telling your body, we need to do something about this. And so your high blood pressure, anxiety attacks. So physical ailments is it, if you're constantly having headaches or your blood pressure is constantly high, you might have some trauma that you need to deal with. Communication. If you are not a good communicator, if you're not a good listener, if you tend to blame other people for everything that's going wrong in your life, then you probably have some trauma that you need to deal with that you are subconsciously avoiding. Um, Another one that a lot of people really don't like to address is how we eat. Like, if you are an overeater or an undereater, if you are always eating unhealthy or always eating out, again, these are subconscious things that your body is trying to do to fill a void. And so if you're constantly like in depression or sad and you eat to fill a void, then you have some trauma that you need to deal with. The biggest thing is pay attention to your body. If you feel uncomfortable, if you don't feel safe, if you feel like you have to be on the defensive all the time, if you feel like you're always angry, if you can't find a reason to be happy, then you have some trauma you need to deal with.
Right, right. And you know what, Jasmine, you're so true. The other thing that we forgot about was to add, we just came out of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So we were in a national shutdown.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another one that overall, blanket overall, we're coming out of all of us is coming out of a traumatic experience.
Absolutely.
That shutdown was traumatic for each of us.
Yep.
Um, and then our children are also they experienced that trauma as well,
Mm-hmm.
and the ones that were just been born,
Yeah.
uh, because the fetus also can feel what the environment it is being born in.
Absolutely.
So though that's another one, but it definitely would do you good to start addressing it. And there are some tools online that you can pull up and look up. One that I had seen even had, if you just lost a job, if you
Mm-hmm.
lost, you just moved, or even you just got diagnosed with an illness. Those are all traumatic experiences. Uh,
Yep.
if your siblings, if you have a sick sibling, you have a sick mother, sick parents, father, all of those things are on that trauma tool. Even get this for people of color, if you have someone incarcerated.
Mm-hmm. Very traumatic.
That's right. Incarceration is the highest right there by death.
Mm-hmm.
So when you hear someone, say, well, my heart is hurting, or I start having chest pains, once my son or daughter received this time, and you're like, okay, well, if it's easy for us to, because we are people of color, and in our environment, we're so used to the storyline
Mm-hmm.
that's something that it's trauma to us, but we've gotten so used to hearing it that we don't really we don't show any emotions toward it.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, I could tell my son, like, guess who passed away? And he'll say, Mom, everybody's dying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when you grown up a certain way and lived in certain neighborhoods, it just becomes a part of life. And like you said, it's we don't have any emotions to it. And because we also feel like, and we a lot of us were raised to feel if we were to display emotion, that makes us weak. And so we don't know what we got to deal with tomorrow, so we can't be weak. And so, but again, that's all trauma ridden.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And then I like you said because I think the buy-in is that it is an inherited
Mhm.
factor. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you don't address it now, sometime in the future, if you're still around and you have offsprings, you're gonna wish that you would, because your offsprings will start to show the same behavior,
Absolutely.
same symptom. And even Jasmine had spoke about it with relationships. When you're feeling like you can fix people, right? That's a learned behavior.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. Like, and it's also a trauma response, because you have to have control over some type of situation or some type of scenario. So it's like, let me fix this. I can't fix me. Let me fix you.
Okay. Now, Jasmine, we also have a question, which is, what is the it says oftentimes kids confuse parenting with controlling them. Can we talk about that, and what strategies that you can coach to around this?
Um, yeah. So kids confuse parenting with controlling. Especially kids these days, it has become difficult. I have three kids, and they're all in different age brackets. So, it's been quite difficult navigating kids in this day and age where they are very communicative. Um, but I would say the biggest strategy for me is completely different from how we were raised. Is talk to our kids instead of saying do as I say do, not as I do, because we know they're going to do it anyway, right? They're going to mimic what they see. It's either they're going to do it in front of us or they're going to do it behind our back. And so that's one of the strategies that I would love to see disappear, is stop telling your children do as I say do, not as I do. You want to create an atmosphere where you are the role model. So if you're expecting a certain behavior from your child, you need to model that behavior, because they're going to take what they see and they're going to emulate that out in the world. Another thing is, like you said prior, a lot of times we have conversations and we stay in a child's face. This is not for you. Where do we think that they're learning this stuff? Like, I would rather my kids learn it from me than to learn it from their friends. There's a way to parent and communicate without having to be their friend. You can still direct and guide. And so I think that having open communication with your children is a good way to parent, and not seeing, because controlling is, I mean, that's subjective. Kids are going, no matter what we do, kids are going to always feel like we're controlling. It's our job until they are of age to make the decisions. There are some things that we have to take control over, but we don't have to seem so overbearing. They still have choices, they still have options. What our job is to help navigate and show them, okay, if you make this decision, this can be the outcome, and if you make this decision, this can be the outcome. I'm going to allow you to choose, because we have to give them the freedom of choice. It's the only way that they're going to learn. So I'm going to allow you to choose. But also, what I think was missing mostly in the Black community, is that given the option to choose one, and then when we chose and it was a mistake, we didn't really have a place to fall back on. There was no comfort, there was no grace. It was always, I told you, you shouldn't have been doing that. And now it's like, okay, you made a mistake, let's talk about it and see how we can fix it the next time around. A lot of times, especially in the Black communities, we do not give our kids grace because we weren't given grace. So we don't really know what that looks like. But if we can be more supportive and more graceful with our kids and how we speak to them and how we allow them to see the world, then I think that that would ease the tension between, oh, you're just trying to control me, as opposed to, oh, you really have my best interest at heart and you want to guide me.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I like you say about the different ages, because parenting children nowadays of different ages is different. Meaning, you can't parent a 7-year-old like you do a 14,
At
a
all.
21-year-old like you do the 14-year-old, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all of them have to have their own amount, and I'm going to go ahead and use grace, because they all have to have that their own amount of grace from
Mm-hmm.
parent. What I like to do is I set parent I mean I set boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I do with my children. Yes, yes. Uh, Also, another thing that I do is, if I say I'm going to do something, I do it.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not going to do it, I don't do it.
Right.
I don't say it. So I try to give clear expectations of what buy-in I got. What am I going to do with this, with anything, and
Yeah.
that, so that they can feel like, okay, I can depend on her. I
Mm-hmm.
can.
Exactly.
She's not going to sugarcoat it, or she's not going to go along with me. She's going to say yes or nay. So I give a clear picture. Um, Now, another thing you got to think when you say controlling, what comes to my mind is power,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And, and in all situations, and even, believe me, even with little children, when I'm working with little children, that's one thing I don't want. I don't want
Mm-hmm.
the power.
Right.
Why? Because that makes it a lot harder when you're fighting for power of someone. Just think of,
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot. So maybe to neutralize it, you know what? I'm gonna give you some respect. And you're gonna give me respect, but we're gonna neutralize it and have the same grace with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes that's all it really takes. And like you were saying, some of us, especially being people of color, we're used to our parents doing one thing and then saying something else.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we're just used to that, and that is where our defense come from. Or we're used to not forgetting or forgiving. And I say forgiving because I have a problem with forgetting. But forgiving, I'm pretty good at.
Mm-hmm.
So even a dash of forgiveness would work in a relationship.
Yeah.
So that comes from you saying, them saying, well, I remember when you did this and this, and you sure messed up then,
Mm-hmm.
and then it comes up every Thanksgiving.
Right.
And it
Right.
happened 10 years ago.
And
We
also apologizing to your children,
yes.
teaching them that it's okay to take accountability, because that's a big thing, is that we don't feel it's necessary. If I'm wrong, I will go back and apologize to my child. I was wrong. We'll have a conversation about it. I'll explain, again, taking accountability, because for one, that teaches them that you can take accountability. It's important because it makes the other people feel seen, heard, recognized, and valued. But then also that nobody is too big to have made a mistake. So it's also important to be able to be okay with apologizing to your child when you were wrong.
Right. And perspective, Jasmine, because my perspective, your perspective may be too different.
Hmm.
And, but if you could still respect my perspective and come back and say, Roberta, your perspective was just as real as mine, that may make me feel a little better too. Other than you saying, no, Roberta, that was just wrong.
Mm-hmm.
If you would have did it Jasmine's way, it would have been done much more better than the way you went and did it. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So saying, you had some pretty good ideas there, but maybe, maybe you try a little bit of mine with your, because we gotta learn how to negotiate and again take that power, that power or that control factor out of the relationships.
Absolutely.
That makes it tough. I used to
Yeah.
work in the classroom. There's no way I was going to be controlling those kids. I'm not doing.
Right. Yeah. You can't even try.
Yes, now direct, yes, and even with my own children, now direct, yes. Are giving some guidance, which is
Mm-hmm.
a lot softer. Hey, hey, if you do it this way, this might work out a little bit better.
Yeah.
Or even what I'll tell y'all, call me and tell me how that worked out. And then I also teach them, like you said, the component of forgiveness
Mm-hmm.
and apology.
Yeah.
Because you gotta forgive. You can't hold on to stuff forever. That also makes you sick.
Yeah. It does.
That adds on to your illnesses. Well,
Absolutely.
now it's just some of the things that are healthy ways to. Like I listened to you had quite a few affirmations,
Mm-hmm.
and I love affirmations myself. I'm an affirmation girl.
Mm-hmm.
Day of mine is going to be amazing. And so each morning, that's if you call me, that's what I'm going to tell you. Probably even inboxed you and told you that. And it's amazing.
Yeah.
So every day, every minute of my days are going to be amazing. And I noticed that you also practice affirmations. Could you
Mm-hmm.
tell us about that?
Yes, that goes into the healing aspect, learning about self love and self talk, how you communicate, with yourself, and how you speak to yourself is extremely important because, like you said, it kind of, for me, if you do it in the morning, it definitely kind of catapults how your day is going to go. But just basically, you are speaking life into yourself, how you want your day to go, how you feel about yourself, how you want to kind of show up in the world. Affirmations are basically, your agreement with yourself on how you want to feel. And so for me, it's very important to just talk to myself in a very kind way, to love on myself with words, to affirm myself, to validate myself. Because the thing is, people often look for outside validation and outside affirmation, and we fall short. We have this expectation that, people are going to give this to us, they're going to feel this way about us. And anytime you have any sort of expectation, most of the time we get disappointed and we fall short. But if you give it to yourself, there's no way you can fall short because you are with you every single moment of every single day. And so if you are needing validation, it's nothing to just stand in front of the mirror and say, today I feel like this. Today I'm going to have an amazing day. I'm a beautiful human being. I am in love with life. I am prosperous. I am bountiful. And so I think affirmations are extremely important to be able to get that self-love piece and to kick off and continue your healing journey for sure.
I love that. Now, I know that you're on TikTok, and
Hmm.
could you share with us the name you're under on TikTok?
Yes, it's on all social media. I am never just Jazz.
Okay. Look, I'm looking for what the rest of. So never
That's all
that.
across the board on all social media. You can find me never just Jazz on all social media.
Okay. And she has some amazing affirmations.
Thank you.
Very amazing journey. I even see her kind of being not kind of, but being all the way clear of who she is. Not really sugarcoating. I've seen some that she was pretty clear about some things that were going on. Uh,
Hmm.
I had went in and looked through them. Um, And I really appreciate your time, Jasmine.
Thank you. I appreciate yours. I'm so happy to be here.
Yes, yes. So we're glad that you took the offer to be with me tonight. Um, is there anything special you want to share?
I do want to also share my website. It's the yes, NEVERJUS as in Sam, T as in Tom, JAS. Never just jazz. My website is the 180mindset.com, and one is spelled out, so it's the ONE80mindset.com. Please check it out. I am in the process of actually establishing a health and wellness nonprofit where I will be offering free services to individuals that are dealing with trauma, trying to learn how to navigate trauma. We do workshops. They're in person, they're virtual. I also go in and teach, like I said, different organizations, trauma informed care, as well as trauma informed communication. It's very important. So, reach out if you or anybody that you know are in need or looking to start their healing journey and they don't know where to start. Reach out. I can help. My goal, my lifetime goal, is to help 180 million people who are suffering from trauma get back on track.
Okay, okay. And I know we're out here.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
because statistics is there's 7 people getting treated for every 7 person, every person that's in treatment. There's 7 people out there,
Mm,
and that mental illness will kill, will be the death.
very quickly.
A lot of people that are out there still
Yes.
suffering with it. That like I said, because it being taboo to
Yes.
discuss how you feel.
Yes.
People always say, "Good morning, how you doing?" But they don't really want to hear how you feel.
Right.
That's not what they want
Right.
to hear. That's not what they want to hear. So
Mm-hmm.
we're not you conditioned to even discuss how we're feeling. We're
Right.
not conditioned to talk about our traumatic episodes or traumatic experiences, or for fact, some of us don't even think we're worthy to even be healed.
Absolutely. Yes.
So
That's
it's
so true.
people struggling from all over. Um, so you definitely with that million got your hand out. You got
Yes,
your
ma'am. And
out.
it's a small number compared to the 80, 90 billion people in the world. Is a very small number, but
Yeah.
yes, there are people out here that are willing to help, that want to listen. I am doing my best to create a safe spaces. Like you said, a lot of times we are afraid to come out and say, what we need to deal with. It is nothing to be ashamed of. We are all dealing with trauma, and I am trying to create a safe space for any and everybody who just needs somebody to talk to.
Yes. Well, thank you. Um, Now, with saying that, also, is there? I know you left your information for everyone to contact you or follow you. Is there anything that you want to leave our audience? Any nugget? Any small nugget?
Um, it's something that I post all the time because I want people to know, like, for one, God love is the best love. The second best is self love. And the very best way for you to devote love to yourself is to heal. Healing is self care.
Okay. Okay. All right. And I think we have maybe 5 minutes, so you just keep saying loaded things. Uh, Tell them about what self care, forms of self care that don't cost money. Because I know I'm part of the group that also will go get my nails done, stuff like
Right.
that as well. So I'm not saying that's not self care, but could you share with them some things they can do for themselves that doesn't cost anything, but it shows self love?
Yes, absolutely. The biggest thing that I think, 'cause when people think about self care, they think of being selfish. And I just want everybody to know there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing, because you have to take care of yourself. And so when you think about what you can do for self care that doesn't cost money, think of like list 5 things that just make you feel happy, that make you feel good. And it can be going for a walk, it can be taking a minute to read a book. It can be watching your favorite show. It can be sitting and having a conversation with a friend. Self-care doesn't mean going out and, having like this luxury spa day. It just means taking care of self. If you are a parent and you are dealing with your kids all day every day, self-care can be a bubble bath. It can be time in your room by yourself with peace and quiet, to where you are getting your mental secure so that you can actually take care of those kids. So self-care can really be anything, but I would say list out 5 to 10 things that make you feel good inside. That those are the things that you can do for self-care. And I would say to practice those, starting off, practice at least one of them twice a week.
I like that. That was rich. I like that was very rich.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, and thank everyone that joined us tonight. Again, is just jazz, right? Is that the
Never just jazz.
never never? I gotta get that never in because I was waiting on something else because she said, well, never just jazz.
Yes,
She's
ma'am.
on all social medias. Um, very like I said, she has beautiful posts, a lot of affirmation, a lot of information about her journey. Maybe it'll fire you or fuel you to start yours. She's looking for people who are ready to start their journey with.
Absolutely.
Maybe you can partner, pair up with her in your own self journey, uh, self help journey. That's what it is.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to add something to it. Um, and thank you all for joining myself and Miss Jasmine tonight on Taboo Chronicles. And good night. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure. I appreciate you guys.
All right. Good night.